Magandang araw muli sa inyong lahat. Welcome sa ating channel, Sir Lopez Vlog. Sa araw na ito, magkakaroon tayo ng self-evaluation dito sa subject na Forensic 5. May descriptive title ito na Lie Detection Technique. Subject ito usually ng mga third year na naka-enroll sa kursong Criminology. Kung gusto nyong malaman ang mga kasagutan ay nandito lamang sa ating description box. Okay? Kung handa na kayo, start na natin sa question number 1. The act of uttering or conveying falsehood or creating a false or misleading information with the intention of affecting wrongfully. A. Lying. B. Deception. C. Boastful, or D. Vain. Number 2. The accused will be required to touch his tongue to an extremely hot metal 9 times unless burned sooner. Once his tongue is burned, he will be adjudged guilty. A. Ordeal of boiling oil. B. Ordeal of hot water. C. Red hot iron ordeal. Or D. Ordeal of cold water. Number 3. He relates the use of hydrosphygmograph during interrogation of suspects. He called it blood pressure pulse test. A. Angelo Mosso B. Defoe C. Sir James Mackenzie or D. Cesare Lombroso. Number 4. Tripod Foundation of Polygraphy, which states that polygraph is capable of making graphic record containing reliable information regarding physiological responses of the subject. A. Mechanical leg premise. B. Physiological leg premise. C. Psychological leg premise. Or D. All of them. Number 5. He developed the control question, which consists of a known lie and incorporated it into the irrelevant technique. A. Angelo Mosso B. Defoe C. Sir James Mackenzie or D. John A. Reed. Number 6. Referring to any force or motion coming from the environment which reaches an organism and has the tendency to arouse. A. Stimulus. B. Deception. C. Normal response. Or D. Specific response. Number 7. The upward blood pressure as the apex of the curve caused by the construction of the heart. Valves are open and blood is rushing into the arteries. A. Specific response. B. Diastolic blood pressure. C. Systolic blood pressure. Or D. Dicrotic knots. Number 8. Considered as an earliest known reference to a method of detecting deception. A. Camasutra. B. Ayur Vida C. Bible. Or D. Google. Number 9. He introduced the word association test during series of irrelevant questions and relevant question separated in time. A. Angelo Mosso B. Defoe C. Francis Galton or D. John A. Reed. Number 10. Dr. Hans Gross mentioned this ordeal in his famous book on criminal investigation, in which beans were, I repeat, Dr. Hans Gross mentioned his ordeal in his famous book on criminal investigation, in which beans were thrown into a sieve as the name of each suspect was called: A. Ordeal of Boiling Oil, B. Hereditary Sieve C. Red Hot Iron Ordeal, or D. Ordeal of Cold Water. 11. Scientific instrument capable of recording simultaneously changes in blood pressure, pulse rate, respiration, and skin resistance as indicative of emotional disturbance, especially of lying subject when being questioned. A. Blood pressure cuff. B. Galvanograph. C. Polygraph, or D. Graphology. Number 12. General rules in formulating test questions in polygraph examination, except A. Questions must be simple and direct. B. They must not involve legal terminologies. C. They must be as simple and as short as possible. Or D. Should not be answerable by yes or no. 13. Serves as the paper feed mechanism of the polygraph machine. A. Keymograph. B. Galvanograph. C. Polygraph, or D. Photograph. 14. The change in the body's resistance to the passage of immediate electrical sensing current. A. Systolic blood pressure. B. Diastolic blood pressure. C. Cardiosphygmograph. D. Galvanic Skin Response. 15. A series of groups of nerve cells of the brain that control the entire endocrine-hormonal system. A. Hypothalamus. B. Homeostasis. C. Epinephrine. D. Non-epinephrine. 16. Who is the first person who used the term polygraph to describe one of his inventions? A. Angelo Mosso. B. Daniel Defoe. C. Francis Galton, or D. Thomas Jefferson. 17. In the test of the Exile ordeal in Greece, a suspended axe was pinned in the center of a group of suspects. When the axe blanked, whosoever was in line with the blade was supposed to be the guilty as pointed by divine providence. What is the missing word? A. Stop. B. Run. C. Escape, or D. Spin. 18. Referring to the downward blood pressure, representing the low pressure to the closing of the valves and heart relax. A. Dichrotic knots. B. Stimulus. C. Diastolic blood pressure, or D. Electrodermal response. 19. The oldest form of crime detection, done by subjecting a subject to an obstacle or trial, and sometimes even involving third degree. A. Banishment, B. Ordeal, C. Exile, or D. Combat. 20. Designed to detect and record changes in respiration of the subject. A. Cardiosphygmograph, B. Cardiosphygmograph na ulit, C. Galvanograph, or D. Anemograph. 21. Designed to detect changes in skin resistance of the subject. A. Cardiosphygmograph, B. Cardiosphygmograph na ulit na naman, C. Galvanograph, or D. Anemograph. Nangyari. Tama, na ulit niya. Never mind. Let's proceed. 22. The change in the body's resistance to the passage of immediate electrical sensing current. A. Galvanic Skin Response, B. Electrodermal Response, C. Both A and B, or D. None of them. 23. Forceful questioning of a person who is reluctant to divulge information. A. Interview, B. Verification, C. Inquiry, or D. Interrogation. 24. Statement of facts, partially acknowledgement of guilt, and usually given with some justification or exemplification in admitting. A. Admission, B. Confession, C. Acknowledgement, or D. Nodding. 25. The last question. The transmission of physical and mental traits of the parents to their offspring through the genes. A. Behavior, B. Personality, C. Emotion, or D. Genetics. Okay, so natapos na natin ang ating self-evaluation sa araw na ito. Magkakaroon muli tayo ng panibagong self-evaluation sa mga susunod na pagkakataon. So kung ikaw ay nagre-review for the board examination at hindi ka pa nakaka-subscribe sa ating channel, please consider subscribing at hit the notification icon para ma-update ka sa mga i-upload nating mga videos na kung saan malaking tulong ito sa inyong preparation to become a licensed criminologist. Okay? So hanggang sa muli, maraming salamat. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat.